This is for anyone who doesn't feel close to anyone anymore. Not in the way that sounds dramatic or sad when said out loud. Not in a way that would make sense as a confession or a cry for help. More in the way that sits quietly in the background of ordinary days, unannounced, almost polite in its presence. The people are still there. The names, the faces, the shared history that should mean something. But something has shifted, and it happened so gradually that there was never a moment to notice it happening. Never a before and after, just a slow fade that only becomes visible in hindsight. Conversations that once meant something now feel like routines to get through. Reunions carry the memory of warmth, but not warmth itself. Someone asks how things are going, and the answer comes easily, automatically, without anything behind it. The connections look the same from the outside, but from the inside, they feel thin, muted, like watching life through a window that was not there before. This is not loneliness. Loneliness aches. It reaches for something. This is different. This is the absence of reaching. The door is open, but walking through it feels like effort that leads nowhere. Invitations arrive, and something inside does not respond. Not with refusal, just with stillness. Just with the quiet recognition that showing up would mean performing a version of presence that no longer feels true. It would be easy to assume something is wrong, to look for a diagnosis, a label, a reason that makes the whole thing legible. But that would be too fast, because sometimes this distance is not a problem. Sometimes it is the body keeping an old promise, a promise made years ago when closeness cost too much, when needing someone meant being exposed to their limits, when opening up meant handing someone away to disappoint. The nervous system does not forget what was expensive, and for some people, what was expensive was not one clear wound that could be named and worked through, but something slower and more diffuse. Years of adjusting to others. Years of reading the room before entering it. Years of being the one who held things together, who stayed calm when others could not, who never needed too much because needing too much made everything harder for everyone. And somewhere along the way, without announcement or permission, the system stopped reaching. Not out of cruelty, out of intelligence, out of a logic that made perfect sense at the time and simply never got revisited. This is what happens when protection works too well. It stops feeling like protection. It feels like clarity, like being past something that used to matter but no longer does. Friends see someone who has things figured out. Family sees someone who does not create problems. The world sees composure, stability, someone who can handle things. But composure built on withdrawal is not the same as composure built on presence. And the difference, invisible from outside, is everything from inside. There is a face people learn to wear, calm, reasonable, unfazed. It does not overreact. It does not make demands. It is liked because it does not inconvenience anyone. And at some point this face fits so well that removing it seems unnecessary, maybe even dangerous. Not because others would reject what is underneath, but because there is no longer certainty that anything is underneath. The role became the whole self, and real closeness, the kind that cannot be managed, requires exactly what the mask was designed to hide: the need for someone, the possibility of being let down by someone who matters. There is something harder to say. Emotional distance is not always a wound. Sometimes it is a choice. Sometimes it is an identity built quietly over years because it offers something closeness does not: control, predictability, the ability to leave without leaving anything behind. There is power in not needing anyone, freedom even. And for some, that freedom was earned through learning again and again that relying on others meant being failed by them, that softness was taken as permission, that opening was followed by entering of things that did not belong. So the walls went up, and they worked. But walls do not choose what they keep out. They block what is dangerous and what is nourishing with equal efficiency. A threat and an offering look the same from behind stone, and a life lived behind walls, no matter how functional, no matter how successful by any external measure, takes on a certain quality over time. The air thins, the colors fade, not because something broke, but because something essential stopped getting in. Something that was cut off so long ago that its absence now feels like personality rather than loss. The psyche does not tolerate imbalance forever. Years of control can collapse into chaos. Years of suppression can erupt without warning. And years of carefully managing closeness, rationing need, training the self to expect nothing, can eventually produce not peace, but numbness. Not wisdom, but a fatigue wearing wisdom's clothes. It does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like this: someone who once loved deeply and now feels almost nothing. Someone who craved connection and now finds it faintly irritating. Someone surrounded by people, good people, people who would show up, who woke one morning and realized none of them felt close. The structure was intact, the feeling was gone. What does closeness actually require? Not time. People know each other for decades and share nothing real, nothing that would hurt to lose. Not compatibility. Some perfectly matched pairs remain strangers their whole lives. What it requires is risk. The willingness to be seen without controlling what is seen. The willingness to need something from someone who might not deliver. The willingness to stay open to disappointment, not because disappointment is valuable, but because the alternative is a sealed life. Safe, yes. Predictable, certainly. But something other than alive. Something that resembles living without quite being it. There is a version of strength that is actually avoidance. A version of independence that is actually exile. A version of calm that is really the exhaustion of someone who stopped fighting for connection because fighting never seemed to lead anywhere worth going. And it is possible to live this way for years, to build a career, maintain friendships, appear whole and functional and even admirable, all while something at the center stays untouched, unmet, unspoken. What was never allowed does not disappear. It sinks. It gathers somewhere out of sight and continues to exert its weight. And for many people, what was never allowed was need itself. The part that wanted to be held, to be chosen, to be someone's priority instead of an afterthought, to matter in a way that could be felt. That part was exiled early because it was too dangerous to keep around. It hoped for things that might not come. It opened doors to rooms full of people who could not be trusted with what was inside. So it was locked away, and the key was lost, and eventually the door itself was forgotten. The person who remained, the one who did not need, did not ask, did not lean or reach or expect, was easier to be, safer, more respected, even admired, but less whole, less capable of the thing everyone pretends not to want, but quietly, desperately does, to matter to someone in a way that cannot be replaced. None of this is simple. Some people feel distant because they were never shown how closeness works. Some feel distant because they are exhausted, because their system has been overloaded so long that neutral is the only setting left. Some confuse enmeshment with intimacy and withdraw the moment real closeness appears. Some felt everything too intensely once and have swung to the opposite extreme, not because they healed, but because they emptied. The question is not which one applies. The question is whether the distance still serves its original purpose. Whether the walls still protect or have quietly become the thing preventing life from getting in. Whether the identity built on not needing anyone is still chosen or just no longer questioned. There may be no answer. There may only be a noticing, a moment of honesty instead of composure, the recognition that somewhere along the way, closeness stopped being difficult and became absent, that the ache faded not because it was resolved, but because the part that could ache stopped reporting in, that what felt like evolution might have been something else entirely. And from here, nothing to fix. No technique to apply, no insight that changes things by morning. Only a question, sitting quietly where it cannot be ignored. Is this distance still protection? Or has it become the thing there is no protection from? If something in this video stayed with you, leave a like. If you want more of this kind of conversation, subscribe. And if you have a thought, something that surfaced while you were listening, leave it in the comments. I read everything and I reply to everyone,